Find your most comfortable position, the one in which your body feels most at ease. Allow yourself to settle into this space, noticing the gentle points of contact between you and the surface that supports you. Feel the subtle weight of your arms, the gentle curve of your spine, the solidness of the ground beneath. Let this physical awareness be your first anchor to the present moment. Now, bring your attention to your breath. There is no need to change it. Simply observe its natural rhythm, the soft rise on the inhale and the complete release on the exhale. With each breath out, imagine you are letting go of just a little more of the day. The day itself is a noisy place. It fills our minds with a constant hum of responsibilities, conversations replayed, and plans for tomorrow. It is a clutter of small, urgent things. Now, however, is the time to let that clutter recede. Picture these thoughts as letters written on a page, and with a slow, deliberate motion, watch as the ink begins to fade, leaving the page clean and clear. The hum of the world softens, becoming a distant, indistinct murmur, and in its place, a quiet space begins to grow. This is the space we will journey from, a space of calm and stillness, ready for a different kind of story. Our journey tonight begins with a departure from the familiar. Imagine yourself lifting away from the greens and browns of the inhabited world, ascending into the cool, dark air of the night. Below you, the cities and towns become a glittering web of lights, and then, slowly, they too fade as we travel over the vast, dark expanse of the southern oceans. The world becomes simple, a deep, star-dusted sky above, and the endless, rhythmic swell of the sea below. We are moving away from the frantic pace of human time towards a place that operates on a different clock entirely. A clock whose hands are glaciers and whose ticks are millennia. We are approaching the end of the world. The air grows colder, purer, and then, on the horizon, a line of white appears so bright it seems to generate its own light. This is the Great Barrier, the threshold to a continent held in stasis. This is Antarctica. It is a world of sublime and silent geometry, a landscape sculpted not by water, but by frozen time. It is a place that holds the memory of our planet's deep past in every layer of its ice. A library of atmospheres and climates stretching back for nearly 1,000,000 years. It is a sleeping giant, breathing in a cycle so slow as to be imperceptible. We have not come here as explorers with flags and machinery. We have come as listeners, as dreamers. We are here to stand at the edge of this immense silence and pose a question. We have come to feel the profound weight of the ice sheet, miles thick, and wonder not just about the rock and sediment it conceals, but about the possibilities it has buried. So let the world you know drift away completely. Close your eyes, if you haven't already, and allow the rhythm of your breathing to be the only movement. For tonight, we journey to the quietest continent on Earth, not to explore what is, but to dream of what might have been. That profound silence, let it be the canvas for our great questions. In a world so ancient, so vast, it is easy to assume that its silence is one of emptiness. that this continent has only ever been a place of ice and wind, a pristine, untouched wilderness waiting for humanity to arrive. But what if that is not the whole story? What if the quiet is not an absence, but a veil, concealing a history so deep it has passed from memory into myth, and from myth into oblivion? Let the question form in your mind as a single, perfect snowflake crystallizing from the cold air. What if, beneath those miles of ancient ice, pressed down under the unimaginable weight of eons, lies the forgotten story of another us, a society of beings who thought and built and dreamt, who looked up at the same sun but saw it hanging in the sky of a different world, a world where Antarctica was not a white desert but a green paradise, a continent teeming with life, fringed with temperate rainforests, its interior carved by great flowing rivers, a land of long summer days and cool dark winters, filled with the sounds of strange birds and unknown creatures. And there, in a river valley or along a temperate coast, a city rises. Centers of art and science and philosophy, built by a people of that long-forgotten summer. Imagine their lives, their triumphs, their fears, all of it unfolding, flourishing, and then vanishing, buried so completely that the planet itself seems to have forgotten they were ever here. The discovery of such a thing would be more than just an archaeological find. It would be a fundamental recalibration of everything we know. The neat, linear story of human progress, of life evolving from simple forms to our own singular, intelligent apex, would be shattered. We would be forced to accept a new and profound truth, that the Earth has given rise to intelligence more than once, that history is not a line, but perhaps a cycle, and with that, the deep existential solitude of our species would transform. We look to the stars for a sign that we are not alone in the cosmos, a search across unimaginable gulfs of space. But what if our silent companion was here all along, separated from us, not by light? The story of humanity would no longer be the story of life on Earth. It would become just one chapter, perhaps the latest, but not the only one. It is a beautiful, fragile image, this city of a lost world. But as we hold it in our minds, we must now introduce the first of the great obstacles, a force of such immense scale that it challenges the very notion of preservation. We must consider the ice. To think of it as a simple blanket of snow, a static covering that gently entombed this forgotten world, is to misunderstand its nature entirely. The Antarctic ice sheet is not a passive entity. It is a geological force. It is alive in the slow, relentless way that mountains and tectonic plates are alive. Imagine, first, its weight, 2 miles thick, 3 in some places, a mass of frozen water, so heavy it has depressed the continent itself, pushing the bedrock down into the Earth's mantle. The pressure at the base of this ice is crushing, measured in hundreds of atmospheres. It is a force that doesn't just bury, it pulps any structure, no matter how strong, any monument built to last for eternity, would, over the course of millennia, succumb to this relentless pressure. It would be ground down, its form lost, its substance mingling with the rock and dust of the continent itself. The ice sheet is a planetary press, one that has been operating for millions of years, slowly turning mountains into rubble. And this great press is not still. The ice moves, driven by its own impossible weight and the faint whisper of geothermal heat from below. The continent is in constant, imperceptible motion. It flows from the high interior plateau towards the surrounding oceans, a slow-moving, frozen river the size of a nation. This is not the gentle flow of water. This is a grinding, scouring, erosive force. As the glaciers move, they drag with them the very bedrock of the continent, acting as a colossal sheet of sandpaper that scours the land clean. Over the ages, this glacial flow would act as a great eraser, wiping the slate of the continent clean, removing not just the works of a civilization, but the very topsoil and rock in which its foundations were laid. So we are faced with a profound challenge. The very thing that hides this potential lost world is also its most patient and thorough destroyer. Its crushing weight would have leveled any structure, and its slow, grinding flow would have swept away the debris. To search for a building, a street, or a pyramid beneath the ice is to search for a sandcastle on a shore with a relentless tide. The ice does not preserve, it consumes. It does not hide, it erases. We must look for something far more subtle. If the ice is a physical eraser, then our second obstacle is the very medium in which that erasure takes place. It is a force more powerful, more fundamental, and infinitely more patient. It is the obstacle of deep time. For our hypothetical civilization to have risen in a green Antarctica, we cannot be speaking of a few thousand years ago. We are not in the time scale of human empires, of Rome or ancient Egypt. For Antarctica to have been a temperate paradise, we must rewind the planetary clock tens of millions of years. Let that number settle in your mind. 50 million years. The entire span of recorded human history, from the first cuneiform scripts to the present day, is a mere 5,000 years. You would have to live that history 10,000 times over to cross this temporal abyss. On such a scale, our own existence is but a fleeting flash of light in a vast, dark hall. We are contemplating a world so ancient that the continents themselves were in different positions. The constellations in the night sky were subtly altered, and the evolutionary path of life on Earth had yet to produce any of the creatures we would recognize today. Time on this scale is not a passive backdrop. It is an active, transformative process. It does not simply hide things. It dismantles reality itself, atom by atom. The very land upon which a lost city might have stood would have been subject to the slow, powerful breathing of the Earth's crust. Over millions of years, mountains are born and weather away into sand. Entire coastlines are submerged or uplifted. The slow dance of plate tectonics would shift and warp the very foundations of the world. A river valley that once hosted a thriving metropolis could be pushed up into a high-altitude plateau or folded down into a deep subterranean trench. And this deep geological time works on everything. The stone of a building, which seems to us a symbol of permanence, would become porous, brittle, and eventually return to sediment. Metals would corrode into faint chemical stains in the rock. Organic materials would decay, leaving behind perhaps a thin layer of carbon, a ghostly echo of once vibrant life. Time is the ultimate agent of entropy. It unmakes what is made. It is a current that flows in only one direction, carrying everything, no matter how strong, towards dissolution. So when we search for this world, we are not just looking through the veil of the ice. We are staring into the face of an almost infinite forgetting. And so we stand before two immense, unbreachable walls. The first is the isophysical force of unimaginable power, a continental grinder that crushes, scours, and erases. The second is deep dissolutive ocean that dismantles, decays, and forgets. They are a partnership in oblivion. The ice acts as the hammer, and deep time is the anvil. Together, they have worked for millions of years, ensuring that whatever came before is not merely hidden but unmade. They have taken any potential artifact, any structure, any proof, and subjected it to a process of planetary recycling. Faced with these forces, the conclusion seems inescapable. To find a lost city, in the conventional sense, is an impossibility. The search for stone and mortar, for tumble-down walls, or the foundations of ancient homes, is destined for failure. The laws of physics and geology themselves seem to forbid it. The ice would have crushed it, and time would have swept away the dust. The book of this lost world has not just been closed. Its pages have been turned to stone, and that stone has been ground into sand. But what if we have been asking the wrong question? What if we are looking for the wrong thing? The assumption has been that a civilization's legacy is written in the things it builds. But perhaps its truest signature is not physical, but chemical, not structural, but metabolic. What if we stop looking for the city and start listening for its ghost? An echo left behind, not in stone, but in the very fabric of the planet. Imagine a fire that burned long ago. The wood is gone, the heat has dissipated, the light is a distant memory. But a thin layer of ash remains, a subtle chemical alteration in the soil, telling the story of the flame. What if an entire civilization leaves behind a similar kind of ash? A faint but indelible trace, woven into the geological strata, a signal that is not visible to the naked eye, but could be detected by the right instruments. Our search, then, is not one of archaeology, but of forensics. We are no longer looking for a body, we are looking for a fingerprint, and that changes everything. We leave behind the idea of archaeology, of shovels and brushes, of stone and bone. Our new path is one of planetary forensics. We are searching for a fingerprint left at a scene, but the scene is an entire continent, and the time of the event was 50 million years ago. To do this, we must learn to read a different kind of language. Not a language of symbols and letters, but of molecules and isotopes, of subtle deviations from the natural baseline. We are searching for a signature. A signature, in this sense, is the unavoidable footprint that a technologically advanced civilization leaves upon its environment. Think of it not as a scar on the landscape, like a canyon or a mountain, which can be erased by time, but as a subtle stain that permeates the very rock. Imagine adding a single drop of dark ink to a vast container of clear water. If you wait long enough, the concentrated drop will vanish, but the entire body of water will be changed, tinted by a subtle, almost imperceptible shade. It is no longer pure. The memory of the ink is now part of the water itself. An industrial civilization is like that drop of ink. Its activities, its energy production, its manufacturing would stain the geological record of its time. This indelible mark isn't left by accident, nor is it intentional. It is a fundamental consequence of a society harnessing energy and manipulating matter on a planetary scale. To build, to create, to power a complex world, you must dig up materials that are rare on the surface and concentrate them. You must synthesize compounds that nature does not make on its own. You must release energy that alters the chemical balance of the atmosphere and oceans. These actions create anomalies, fingerprints that are wholly distinct from the slow, natural cycles of the earth. And unlike a building, a chemical fingerprint cannot be crushed. It can be buried, diluted, and transformed, but with the right tools, it can be found. The ghost we are hunting for, then, is a ghost in the planet's chemistry. Our journey now takes us deep beneath the ice, with instruments designed to detect the faintest traces of this ancient, unnatural stain. Our first search begins with a journey downwards, a slow and patient descent through time itself. Imagine a hollow drill spinning silently, lowering itself through the immense column of compacted ice. Each layer it passes is a season, a year, a century. It moves through the records of ancient snowfalls, past thin veins of volcanic ash from eruptions that shook the world long before our own ancestors appeared. After days of drilling, it finally touches the bedrock, the hidden continent beneath. It continues to turn, now biting into the stone, extracting a long, perfect cylinder of sedimentary roca library of the pre-glacial world. In the quiet of a laboratory, this core is analyzed. For most of its length, it tells a familiar story, the slow, rhythmic narrative of geology. Layers of sandstone speak of ancient beaches, mudstone reveals the floor of a long-vanished lake, and thin seams of coal tell of swampy forests that flourished for millennia. It is the planet's natural biography. But then, as we examine a layer corresponding to an age of perhaps 50 million years, we find something that does not belong, a disruption in the narrative. It is a thin, dark line, no thicker than a fingernail, but its color and texture are starkly different from the layers above and below. It is a geological scar, a sentence written in an alien ink, and when we analyze its composition, the story it tells is astonishing. This layer is saturated with materials that have no business being there in such concentrations. We find anomalous traces of heavy metals, like platinum, rhenium, and iridium elements that typically remain locked deep within the Earth's crust, not spread evenly across the floor of an ancient ecosystem. Their presence suggests a massive industrial process of mining, smelting, and refining on a scale large enough to poison an entire landscape with its byproducts. Alongside them, we might find the even stranger signature of synthetic compounds, plastics, polymers, and other complex industrial molecules after 50 million years would not remain intact. But they would not vanish either. They would break down into a cascade of unnatural hydrocarbons, a kind of molecular fossil that has no known biological source. It would be the chemical ghost of a material that nature never learned how to make. This thin, dark Laera cocktail of rare metals and fossilized synthetics. It wouldn't show us a face or a name, but it would scream an undeniable truth into the silence of the geological record. We were here. The chemical layer in the rock is a profound discovery, but it is a diffuse clue. It tells us that a civilization existed, but not precisely where. Particles cast into the atmosphere or water can travel for thousands of miles, settling in a thin, uniform layer across a vast area. To narrow our search, we need to look for a different kind of trace, one that is more localized. We must search for the ghost of their energy. Every civilization is an engine. It consumes and transforms vast quantities of energy. According to the fundamental laws of physics, no process is perfectly efficient. Every action, every machine, every light bulb, and every city block generates waste heat. This heat radiates away, seeping into the ground, warming the rock and soil beneath. For a single home, this effect is negligible. For a sprawling industrial metropolis of millions, operating for centuries, this cumulative thermal leakage would be immense. It would create a vast underground reservoir of warmth, a heat island that would saturate the bedrock for kilometers in every direction. Now, imagine that civilization vanishes. The engines stop, the lights go out, and the city falls silent. The heat source is gone, but the warmth that soaked into the planet's crust does not disappear instantly. Like the last embers of a colossal bonfire, it would begin to fade. But with the immense insulating power of the rock and the ice that would eventually cover it, this process would take an almost unimaginable amount of time. The heat would radiate away slowly over millions of years. And so, our hunt shifts from drilling to sensing. Imagine sophisticated instruments gliding high above the endless ice sheet, or a network of sensors placed gently upon its surface. They are not looking at the ice, but through it, mapping the faint geothermal heat that flows from the planet's core. For the most part, the map they create is uniform, but in one specific location they detect an anomaly, an area, perhaps a dozen square miles, that is consistently, inexplicably, a few thousandths of a degree warmer than all the terrain around it. It is a signal so faint it is almost lost in the statistical noise, but it is there. A dying ember from a fire that was lit 50 million years ago. This is the thermal ghost. It is the faint but persistent signature of a massive concentration of energy. The last whisper of a city's warmth, still echoing through the deep rock. A civilization is more than just its industry and its energy. It is also a biological force. No intelligent society can exist without fundamentally reshaping the ecosystem it inhabits. It clears land, it grows food, it displaces native species. This profound interaction with the living world would leave its own distinct and durable ghost in the fossil record. To find it, we return to our drill core, but this time our focus is on the microscopic traces of life that were preserved before the ice came. The fossilized pollen spores and tiny shells of the ancient Antarctic world. For millions of years, these fossils tell a story of natural harmony. The pollen record reveals a rich and diverse tapestry of life, the signature of vast temperate rainforests, of strange conifers and flowering shrubs unique to that lost world. It is a record of an ecosystem in balance, evolving slowly in response to the gentle shifts of climate. But then, in the very same thin layer that holds our chemical anomaly, the story changes, abruptly, violently. What we see is a sudden collapse in biodiversity. The pollen from dozens of native tree species vanishes, replaced by an overwhelming abundance of pollen from just one or two types of grass-like plants. It is the unmistakable fingerprint of agriculture. It is the story of ancient forests being cleared on a massive scale, replaced by domesticated crops designed to feed a large, concentrated population. At the same time, the fossil record of small animals and insects in that layer would show a localized mass extinction. The native fauna, unable to adapt to the sudden destruction of their habitat, would simply disappear. This biological signature is powerful because of the speed at which it occurs. Natural ecological changes happen over the vast timescales of geology, but the changes we see here would be virtually instantaneous in the rock record. It would be the story of an ecosystem being systematically dismantled and reassembled to serve a single species. This paleontological trace, this ghost of a re-engineered landscape, is our third key piece of evidence. It is the story not just of a civilization's presence, but of its dominance over the natural world. We have gathered our evidence, 3 distinct and separate clues, each one a faint echo from a world that has long since vanished. We have the geochemical anomaly, a thin, dark stain in the rock, rich with the unnatural byproducts of industry and manufacturing. We have the geothermal signature, a lingering, ghostly warmth in the planet's crust, the final dying ember of a city's energy. And we have the paleontological trace, the fossilized story of a native ecosystem being abruptly and systematically re-engineered for agriculture. Taken alone, any one of these signatures is a curiosity, a puzzle for scientists to debate. A strange chemical layer could be the result of a unique, localized mineral deposit. The thermal ghost could be an undiscovered geothermal vent. The sudden shift in the fossil record could be attributed to a fast-acting natural blight or a localized climate event. Each clue, in isolation, leaves room for doubt. It is a whisper in the dark, easily dismissed as the wind. But the true power of this evidence is not in the individual clues, but in their perfect, undeniable convergence. Imagine our instruments confirming that the thermal anomaly, our ghost of heat, is located in the precise geographical area where the drill core revealed the chemical stain and the biological disturbance. Imagine that all 3 signals, the chemical, the thermal, and the biological point, not only to the same location on the map, but to the exact same thin sliver of geological time. The odds against such a coincidence being a product of random natural processes become astronomical. This is how the fingerprint is formed. One clue corroborates the other, weaving together into a single, irrefutable story. The chemical trace tells us what they did. The thermal ghost tells us where they did it. And the biological scar tells us how they live. It is a story told not with words, but with evidence. A case built on the unshakable foundation of physics, chemistry, and biology. We would have no photograph of their faces, no sample of their language, no artifact from their hands. But we would have something just as powerful. We wouldn't have found the city, but we would have found its shadow, perfectly cast and preserved across 50 million years. It is easy to let our minds drift on these currents of speculation, to see this story as a pure flight of fantasy. A lost civilization on a green Antarctica feels like a tale from a forgotten book of myths. But the most incredible part of this journey is that its foundation, the stage upon which our entire story is set, it is a scientific fact, a lost world that we have already discovered. We now turn to the real-world marvel that makes our entire question possible: the climatic history of Antarctica and the modern discovery of its hidden, liquid heart. For most of human history, Antarctica was a place of the imagination, a hypothetical southern landmass. When it was finally explored, it was revealed to be a continent of ice, a place so hostile and alien it seemed impossible that it could have ever been anything else. It was seen as a permanent, unchanging feature of our world. But science, in its patient way, began to uncover a story that was far stranger and more dynamic. The anchor for our speculation is a period in Earth's deep past, known as the Eocene epoch. During this time, roughly 34 to 56 million years ago, the Earth was a greenhouse world. Global temperatures were dramatically warmer than they are today, and the poles were free of significant ice. Antarctica was not the sterile white desert we know, but a vibrant, living continent. This is not a guess. It is a certainty, proven by the evidence we have already found. And in the modern era, our exploration has revealed another secret. We have discovered that even today, beneath miles of crushing ice, Antarctica is not entirely frozen. We have found a vast, hidden network of hundreds of subglacial lakes and rivers kept liquid by the faint geothermal heat of the Earth and the immense pressure from the ice above. The most famous of these, Lake Vostok, is one of the largest lakes on the planet, a body of water that has been sealed off from the outside world for millions of years. This discovery proves that complex systems can survive, hidden and isolated, beneath the ice. The lost world of the Eocene provides the time frame for a civilization to arise, and the existence of subglacial lakes proves that the continent still holds profound secrets, locked away beneath its frozen surface. The journey to uncover Antarctica's warm past was not a single event, but a slow and steady accumulation of evidence that forced scientists to rethink the impossible. For decades, the dominant image of the continent was one of eternal ice. Early explorers, found only rock, snow, and incomprehensible cold. The idea of a lush, green history seemed like poetry, not a serious scientific hypothesis. The first clues were subtle fossilized remains of ancient sea life in the mountains, indicating the land had once been an ocean floor and had been tectonically uplifted. But this spoke of geological time, not necessarily of a different climate. The true revolution began in the 1980s, during expeditions to islands off the Antarctic peninsula. Paleontologists began to find things that simply should not have been there. They unearthed the fossilized wood of massive trees, including relatives of modern-day beeches and pines, indicating vast forests. Even more shocking was the discovery of fossilized pollen from palm trees and other warm-weather plants. This was not the signature of a chilly subarctic forest, but of a temperate, mild, and humid climate. Each new discovery added another brushstroke to the picture of this lost world. Scientists found the fossilized remains of large amphibians, reptiles, and even early marsupials, similar to those found in modern-day Australia and South America. This painted a picture of a continent teeming with diverse animal life, a crucial land bridge connecting other continents into the supercontinent of Gondwana. The evidence became undeniable. Antarctica had not only been alive, but it had been a thriving, vibrant ecosystem for tens of millions of years. Imagine the sense of wonder in that moment of discovery. A scientist bundled against the freezing wind, cracking open a piece of shale to reveal the delicate, perfectly preserved impression of a fern leaf that last saw the sun 50 million years ago. It was a discovery that shattered the perception of a perpetually frozen continent. It proved, definitively, that an entirely different world, a paradise of forests and rivers, had existed right where the harshest desert on Earth now stands. It was a discovery that proved a lost world was not a fantasy, but a geological reality. The world we have just uncovered, a vibrant, forested Antarctica, flourished for an immense period of time. It was a world of long, twilight summers and equally long, dark but mild winters. Imagine the sounds of that world, the flow of great rivers carving their way to the sea, the wind in the leaves of trees that no longer exist, and the calls of creatures now lost to time. This paradise was not a fleeting phase. It was the normal state of the continent for longer than humanity has existed. So the great question is not just what it was like, but why it ended. What powerful engine of planetary change could turn a greenhouse into a freezer? The answer lies in the slow, inexorable dance of the continents. The Earth's crust is not a single solid shell, but a mosaic of titanic plates that drift upon the molten mantle below. For much of its history, Antarctica was not an isolated island. It was the heart of a great supercontinent called Gondwana, fused together with what would become South America, Africa, India, and Australia. This connection was its lifeline. Warm ocean currents from the equator could flow south, bathing its shores in tropical heat and keeping its climate mild and stable. But this connection was not permanent. In the deep, slow rhythm of geological time, the plates began to shift. Australia, and then, finally, South America began to break away, rifting apart from Antarctica and drifting northwards. This colossal separation, taking place over millions of years, had a profound consequence. It opened up a gateway of clear ocean all the way around the southern pole. For the first time, water could circumnavigate the globe without being deflected by a landmass. This gave birth to one of the most powerful forces on our planet, the Antarctic circumpolar current. Think of this current as a great spinning moat, a thermal barrier that isolated the continent from the rest of the world. It trapped the cold polar waters, preventing them from mixing with the warm subtropical currents. With its supply of heat from the north cut off, Antarctica began to cool. It was not a sudden event, but a slow, million-year descent into a deep freeze. The mild winters grew harsh. The first frosts turned into permanent mountain glaciers. These glaciers merged, forming ice caps that crept down into the valleys, and eventually they joined together into the colossal ice sheet we know today, entombing an entire continent and its memory in a coffin of ice. This scientifically proven history of a green Antarctica and its slow, inexorable descent into ice does something remarkable for our journey tonight. It lifts our central question out of the realm of pure fantasy and places it into the world of reasoned possibility. The story of a lost civilization is no longer a baseless dream, because science itself has provided us with the perfect stage upon which this grand drama could have played out. It confirms that a habitable, complex world capable of supporting life truly did exist there. This geological narrative provides the most crucial element for any form of complex evolution: time. The long, stable warmth of the Eocene epoch, before the continents fully separated and the fatal circumpolar current was born, provided a window of opportunity many millions of years long. It was a period of climatic paradise, an ideal cradle for life to not only exist, but to flourish and diversify in ways we can only imagine. Science, therefore, not only allows for our premise, it actively provides the exact timeline in which it could have occurred. Even more profoundly, this real history gives us the story of that civilization's potential demise. Their world was not ended by a sudden, violent cataclysm from space. It was ended by a slow-motion climate catastrophe of planetary scale. The freezing of Antarctica was not a single event. It was a process that unfolded over generations, over millennia. Imagine what that would have been like for a sentient society. They would have had time to see it coming. They would have watched, over the course of centuries, as their mild winters grew deadly, as their fertile river valleys were slowly encroached upon by advancing glaciers. This slow apocalypse presents a poignant narrative. It would have been a long, drawn-out struggle against an enemy they could not possibly defeat, the planet itself. They may have used their technology to try and hold back the cold, building great works of engineering that would have left behind even more powerful geothermal and chemical signatures before they were ultimately consumed. The story science tells us, then, is a perfect tragedy. It gives our hypothetical civilization a home, a long and peaceful summer to rise, and a slow, inescapable winter in which to meet their end. The true story of Antarctica's past does more than just provide a plausible setting for our speculation. It teaches us a deeper, more humbling lesson about the very nature of the world we live on. We experience our planet on a human timescale. To us, the mountains are permanent, the oceans are eternal, and the ground beneath our feet is the definition of solid and unchanging. But this perception is an illusion, a trick of our fleeting lifespans. The main lesson that the green Antarctica teaches us is that our planet is a shapeshifter. It is not a static stage upon which life unfolds, but a dynamic and restless entity, constantly remaking itself on a scale we can barely comprehend. Entire worlds, as alien and exotic as any we might imagine on other planets, can be born, flourish, and die right here beneath our own feet. The temperate paradise of the Eocene is one such world. The great oxygen-rich coal swamps of the Carboniferous, with their giant insects and colossal ferns, are another. These are not different planets. They are different versions of our own planet. Earth has contained multitudes. This truth forces us to see our own time in a new light. The stable, relatively gentle climate of the last 10,000 years. The period in which all of human civilization has arisen is not the rule. It is the exception. It is a brief, gentle summer in the Earth's vast and often violent timeline. The stability we know is a precious and perhaps temporary gift. The ground is not as solid as it feels, and the world is not as permanent as it seems. And so, the real story of Antarctica gives our speculative journey its ultimate meaning. In searching for a civilization lost to time, we discover a deeper truth about the transience of worlds. We learn that our planet is not just a home, but a cosmic library of stories with entire volumes written and then erased. The greatest secret is not whether another civilization might be buried under the ice, but the certainty that another world is. Our journey tonight began with a single, fantastic question, a whisper of a thought in the quiet of your mind. We dared to imagine a world beneath the ice, a lost chapter in the story of life on Earth. From that simple seed of curiosity, we began a great exploration, not of the world, but of an idea. We traveled to the bottom of the globe and stood before the immense silence of the Antarctic continent. Together, we faced the insurmountable obstacles that stood in the way of our search. We contemplated the crushing, grinding power of the ice sheet, a geological force that does not preserve but erases. And we stared into the even greater abyss of deep time, a force of dissolution that dismantles reality itself, atom by atom. These twin guardians of oblivion seemed to make our search an impossibility, a fool's errand. But then, we learned to change the way we looked. We abandoned the search for stone and mortar, and instead, we learned to listen for the faintest echoes a civilization could leave behind. Our search became a forensic hunt for the subtle fingerprints of existence, a chemical stain of industry, a thermal ghost of a city's warmth, and the biological scar of a world re-engineered. And finally, to anchor our search, we found that our planet's own history provides the very stage for this grand drama. The scientific certainty of a once green Antarctica, a temperate paradise that was slowly and tragically consumed by ice, showed us that our question was not entirely a fantasy. The real world had already created a stage more wondrous and more poignant than any we could have invented. Our journey has taken us from a dream through an impossible challenge to a new way of seeing, and has finally landed us upon the bedrock of reality. And so, what is the ultimate lesson from this journey into the ice and the deep past? What profound truth do we carry back with us? It is a truth about the nature of a legacy. We are accustomed to thinking of a legacy in human terms: the monuments we build, the stories we tell, the memories we leave behind. We look at the great pyramids or ancient texts and see a form of immortality, a defiance of time. But our journey tonight has shown us that on a planetary scale, this kind of legacy is impossibly fragile. The most enduring legacy is not what a civilization builds, but the impact it has. The truest measure of its existence is not the height of its towers, but the depth of its footprint on the planet's systems. A civilization's ultimate longevity may not be in its pyramids, which will inevitably turn to dust, but in its chemical signature, which becomes a permanent part of the geological story. The most lasting monument is not made of stone, but is written in the language of atoms and isotopes, an indelible entry in the planet's own memory. This reframes our entire perspective. The evidence we have been hunting: the chemical stain, the thermal ghost, the biological scars, not just a set of clues. It is the legacy itself. It is the final, irreducible proof of a complex existence. It suggests that a civilization's story is told not by its historians, but by its planetary consequences. And perhaps then, the great white silence of Antarctica is not an emptiness after all. Perhaps it is not a sign of absence, but a different kind of presence. It is like the page of a very old book, a book telling an epic story, where the ink has long since faded back into the elements. The words are no longer visible, the images are gone. But if you look closely in the right light, you can still see the faint impression where the letters once pressed into the paper. The story is no longer there to be read, but the evidence that a story was once told is everywhere. This meditation on a lost world, on a legacy written in chemistry instead of stone, inevitably turns the mirror back towards ourselves. It compels us to ask a quiet, profound question: what will our signature be? When the last human memory has faded, when our books have turned to dust, and our digital archives have succumbed to entropy, what will be the final, indelible proof that we were here? If a future intelligence, millions of years from now, were to drill down into the rock layer that is forming today, what would they find? They would find our layer, a thin, dark seam in the rock, just like the one we searched for. It would be unmistakable. It would be filled with the strange molecular fossils of our plastics, a material we created in abundance. It would show a sudden, violent spike in carbon isotopes from the burning of ancient forests and fossil fuels. It may even hold the faint, lingering radioactive signature of our nuclear age. All our triumphs, our art, our music, our love, and our grief would be gone, ground into the silence of geological time. The only thing left to tell our story might be this chemical stain. Is that, then, our ultimate legacy? A layer of plastic and carbon. The search for a hypothetical civilization under the Antarctic ice becomes, in the end, a quiet meditation on our own profound impermanence. It is a humbling thought, but not a frightening one. It connects us to the great, slow cycles of the planet, reminding us that we are not separate from them, but a part of them. Our existence, like all the worlds that have come before, is a fleeting and beautiful chapter in an infinitely longer story. Let the echo of our own human story now fade, and allow your mind to settle into a deeper, quieter space. Let us return to the world beneath the ice, not as explorers, but as participants in its profound stillness. Feel your awareness sinking down through the immense, silent column of white, down through a history written in layers of frost and time. Here, beneath the ice, there is a silence unlike any other. It is not merely the absence of sound. It is the absence of the memory of sound. A silence that has held its breath for 1,000,000 years. It is a perfect, velvet quiet that absorbs all thought, all worry, all restlessness. Let this deep and ancient silence be your own. And there is a darkness here, absolute and gentle. A darkness that has never been touched by the light of the sun or the moon. It is not an empty or a fearful dark, but a comforting, swaddling darkness. The kind of darkness that allows for perfect rest, for a complete letting go. It is the deep slumber of the planet itself. Feel the pressure, the steady, constant, and immense weight of the ice above. Do not feel it as a crushing force, but as a great, heavy blanket, a grounding presence that holds you perfectly still, safe and secure. It is a pressure that stills all movement, that calms every tremor. It is the firm and gentle embrace of the earth. Here, time itself is different. The frantic pace of minutes and hours dissolves. Time passes not in ticks of a clock, but in the slow, patient crystallization of ice, in the imperceptible flow of a glacier, in the long, slow breath of a sleeping continent. There is nothing to do, nowhere to be. There is only the stillness, the darkness, and the deep, peaceful slumber that surrounds you. You are here now, in this place of perfect peace. There is nothing left to explore, nothing left to discover. The long journey is complete. You can let it all go now. Let the immense, calming pressure of the deep earth be the weight of your blankets, holding you securely as you rest. Let the absolute, ancient silence of the sleeping continent quiet your mind, smoothing away the last of your thoughts. The story is over. The questions can rest. They have served their purpose, and now they can dissolve into the quiet. All of the ideas, the images, and the wonders can fade, leaving only the simple and profound feeling of peace. There is nothing left to do, nowhere left to go. Now there is only the stillness, the darkness, and the deep, peaceful sleep that awaits you. Allow your mind to drift. Allow your body to rest. Sleep now.